Hi everyone, something really cool to show you to start the video off with today, spice it up a little bit, is these new Riven loading panels. A really talented artist from the Netherlands sent them to me and I just think they look amazing. They're kind of like 3D. I have Broken Covenant, Dawnbringer, and then Spirit Blossom is on my little shelf behind me there. This is not an ad, I have to tell you if it is. I just thought she did a fantastic job, so I wanted to show them off. But if you want to check them out yourself, there's a Discord link in the description below. No commission, no nothing like that. I just really wanted to promote something that's really sick. Now, the video topic we're about to talk about might be one of the biggest things that's ever happened to League ever. I know a lot of clickbait shit gets thrown around in the League content sphere. I'm not totally innocent of that myself, but I can't overstate how much this change will affect the game. And as someone who has a lengthy competitive background in gaming, not just League, I'm here today to explain why Riot's latest control scheme edition will fundamentally change League of Legends as we know it. This video will also be timestamped down below, so if there's a specific part of the video you want to watch, it'll all be in the video timeline because we have a lot to go over today. This all came about in Riot's latest dev update earlier today. Before we jump into the new control scheme, we might as well go over the other parts of the dev update as well because there's actually a lot in here. I'm going to cut out the fluff for you so we can get right to the meat and potatoes. With that, their first new point of coverage is the Xin Zhao visual update. Looks pretty sick, not too different from the bloke we all know and hate getting ganked by. Just sporting his more patriotic Demacian armor. His kit is staying the same, but his skins will be getting updated along with his default. To celebrate his new look, he will also be receiving a new epic skin in the next act as well. His update will be live in 25.17. Following on from the Viktor outrage last year as well, Machine Herald Viktor will be coming in 25.19. And to give those OG Viktor faithfuls, I'm looking at you Hancock and Dunn, a nod of recognition, all Viktor players that had Mastery 5 or above on him before August 4th will receive the skin for free. Next up, for those of League Unk status, like me, Doombots is making a return. If you're a newish player that wasn't around for the first Doombots, this is like hard mode League, but versus bots. And it's not like, yeah, okay, I'm Diamond 4, I'll have no issues. This mode is literally just unfair. It's not a case of if you'll die to the game, but when. That being said, the challenging nature of the mode is very fun, and I am excited for its return. The next part of the blog is the control scheme, but I'm just gonna put that on the back burner for now because there's been a big focus on smurfing recently, and thus it got a big section of addressal at the tail end of this video. So we'll touch on that before the control scheme stuff. You can always skip ahead if you'd like to. The first point of declaration is Riot is taking additional action versus the most offensive smurfing behaviors, boosting and hitchhiking. Now I don't know about you guys, but that's the first time I've heard the term hitchhiking. It basically just means someone duos with a higher ranked player on a smurf, thus inflating their rank. I mean, I always called it boosting someone, but I guess this just makes sense and helps differentiate it from a player just playing on someone else's account, which is what boosting actually is. Riot claims they'll be taking action on both accounts if they're caught in the offense of hitchhiking, the booster and the boostee. On that, Vanguard is also being called into action for detection on sold and bought accounts as well, so they're really cracking down on smurfing. That being said, if you have an alt account, it won't be touched, especially if you're the only one that's played on it. I think Riot understands that players typically want more than one account and don't always use them for malicious ranked behaviors. Also, players that start more than one account usually buy their favorite skins again, so more money for Riot means they won't really touch it. Now onto the main video topic. WASD movement and its implementation into League of Legends. For those who are probably newer gen gamers or younger players, WASD has been a movement scheme basically for as long as PC gaming has been around, and just involves having your left hand on the WASD keys to move forward, backwards, and strafe, while your right hand is on the mouse for aiming in FPSs and MOBAs. But this is also a popular movement scheme for top-down games or side-scrollers. Its application is vast because of its ergonomics and ease of use. So how are they making it fit into League, and why is it such a big deal? Let's begin with Riot's other blog they released alongside the dev update on the movement scheme. The blog starts saying, the way we all control League, point and clicking isn't going anywhere. It will coexist with WASD, so if you're super casual and stressed about having to relearn the game, don't be. Secondly, it's being rolled out slowly. PvE first for a while, then normal queues before it makes its way into ranked and pro play in a more refined state based on feedback. On the tail end of this statement in the dev blog, interestingly though, Riot says, quote, we want to ensure there's no clear advantage to either control scheme team over the other before WOSD gets anywhere near ranked, which I find super interesting because I just don't believe that to be possible unless they're nerfing WOSD in some way before it comes to League. I'm also going to refer to WASD as WOSD from now on because it's just easier to say. Let's continue through the WOSD blog before we jump into the actual mechanics. In the blog, quote, "One of the areas we'll specifically be watching is how WOSD affects the balance between moving and attacking, especially at high speeds. Think 80 carry roll kiting. For instance, right now, it can be easier on WOSD to kite than using point and click. So we'll be focused in that area to ensure we make adjustments when needed to keep things equitable across both control schemes. Thirdly, WOSD is already tweaked with adjustments to actually work with certain spells. Here's some examples. For channeled spells like Misfortune's ult, we adjusted the code so held WOSD keys won't accidentally cancel abilities as soon as they begin. And Mbessa's passive needed some care to ensure you wouldn't be forced to dash only the smallest possible distance. And we added targeting options for flash to help it feel more natural when flashing either in the direction your champion is moving or when you suddenly need to go over a wall in the opposite direction. So they're definitely doing their part to make it a little bit more intuitive. They also included this bit of feedback from high elo playtesters to give us some insight as to how people have found WOSD thus far. You can pause the video to read if you'd like, and while you've got the video paused, maybe do a quick check to see if you're subscribed. I'd really appreciate it as we near the 200k milestone. Thank you in advance. Alongside WOSD as well, they're introducing dynamic locked camera, an option that enhances field of view by subtly shifting the camera as your mouse and champion move. The goal is just to increase visibility for those who play locked camera / lower APM players. And the last thing I promise before we dive into the actual WOSD mechanics is the introduction of last hit indicators making their way to unranked queues. When they introduced jungle timers and all that other hand-holdy stuff, I only thought it was a matter of time before they came, and here they are. It does take a bit of skill away, but I mean, everyone was objected towards being visible when pinged and jungle camp timers, and now they're just part of the game, so I don't know. If it helps new players, sure. Now let's explore the actual mechanics on why WOSD will need to be tweaked or altered. Sorry for making you wait, I know there was a lot in the way of that, but it was all contextually relevant, yada yada. Let's preface all this by saying League of Legends, and by extension its champions and abilities, were not designed with WOSD as a movement scheme or control scheme in mind. Firstly, the speed of inputs from a hand on the keyboard versus a hand on the mouse for movement inputs is basically quartered, because we're splitting the workload of inputs from 1 finger to 4. Chromosome Donator on Reddit explains it well. With WOSD, you're splitting the work to not only between your left and right hands, you're also splitting it 4 directions with your fingers. That is objectively, unquestionably superior to only being able to use 1 finger on 1 hand. It's like instead of being able to play piano with only 1 finger on 1 hand, you're able to use 2 hands and all your fingers. By extension, for movement, we have 1 finger on our right click. For a movement input to register, the right finger has to go down as well as the mouse's movement to that next position, then another up and down from your right finger to input the command. This accumulates in milliseconds. For example, if you wanted to go left and then immediately right to dodge an ability, you'd have to drag your mouse left, click, and then drag it to the opposite side of your champion and click. When you're playing, this seems to be almost instant on your screen when you do it, but when you compare it to WOSD going left and right, it happens in literally a fraction of the time because your fingers are already on the keys for directional input. No dragging needed. Imagine how kiting on an ADC is gonna look. And not only that, keys don't have to go down as far to register on the keyboard as a mouse click does. This point is further exacerbated when we bring what is admittedly a very new technology, analog keyboard switches, into the equation. These first came about when we saw the keyboard brand Wooting introduce variable actuation points in key switches. And this, as well as League of Legends, was extremely hotly debated in the FPS gaming scene. Some analog switches even got banned. Razors can't be used anymore. And it was all specifically to do with, same as League, movement abuse. The reason being is it became an almost instant antagonizing strafe, allowing the player to easily pull off a mechanic called wiggling. This on the enemy screen trying to shoot you just looks like you're going back and forth really fast and can really throw off tracking. And now, because of variable actuation points made possible through analog switches, was about to become the norm in the competitive market. While this won't be as impactful in League, I can almost see people moving like when you have predicted movement or whatever, where they're all stuttery. I know it's only from your perspective due to latency, but it will be from the opponent's perspective as well once WOSD is here. I can absolutely not do as good of a job as Optimum at explaining switches, so I'm gonna have a snippet from one of his videos a few months ago on exactly how this works, because it all probably sounds pretty confusing thus far, but once you watch this, it'll all make sense. He is a fantastic fellow Australian creator who focuses on the latest tech, so if you'd like to see more from him or this full video, it'll be linked below.
This is me strafing on 2 different different keyboards, and as you can see, one is a lot more responsive than the other, despite the input being identical. That's because one of these uses a mechanical switch, while the other uses a more responsive, more sensitive magnetic switch. The difference in latency is multiple frames, and there is a night and day difference in what these keyboards feel like to play on. The magnetic switch keyboard gives you a legitimate competitive advantage, and it's extremely customizable. Also the first keyboard to introduce a customizable actuation point, although the range back then was a little bit more limited and features like rapid trigger and SOCD didn't exist. The analog switches themselves were also overly complex, using moving lenses and infrared LEDs. A couple years later though, they would fix that and make this right here, the Leica switch, the first magnetic gaming switch. You only have one single point in the switch that is used for an input, and it's purely a mechanical interaction. You push down on the keycap, which moves the stem, which, when pushed deep enough, allows the metal contact on the inside to close. This activates the signal, and when the switch is released above this point, the contact reopens and the switch is reset. This mechanical interaction, seemingly simple, has been studied and obsessed over, leading to the hobby of building custom mechanical keyboards. While a mechanical switch only has a single point of input, an analog switch has around 40. Now, behind that 40, there are thousands of data points, but keyboard makers understandably simplify it quite a bit for the end user. So while the actuation point in a mechanical switch is fixed, you can change it to be wherever you want in an analog switch. And not only that, but you can adjust the reset point as well, allowing you to have a switch that not only activates early, but resets instantly as well. The result is that your finger inputs are now a lot more closely in sync with what you see happening on the screen, compared to a mechanical switch where you'll experience delay in that void range of travel above and below the actuation point. So it's very underappreciated how much good aim is actually just really good movement. The faster you can sync and mirror your strafe against an opponent, the easier they are to track, and the cleaner your aim will be. Moving in response to how they move, either matching it or countering it, having a more responsive keyboard here makes a huge difference.
These same keyboards, just to add further credibility to their competitive viability, are also used by top tier players such as TenZ.
Like, it actually feels like cheating. I don't know how to explain it. I think keyboards are kind of like whatever. Other than Wooting. Wooting is the first keyboard brand that has actually like innovated. Like this keyboard gives you a competitive advantage, and I'm not even joking. I'm not sponsored by them. I bought my own keyboard. They didn't even send it to me. Actually, no. They sent one to me. I have a backup. So I'm using the one they sent to me, but I bought another one as an extra because it was that good. Like I can't use any other keyboard after using this one because it's just that good. Like, it actually feels like cheating. I don't know how to explain it. Set per key actuation. These ones were at 0.1. And then my space bar, I put to 3 or 3.5. I don't remember. I can't accidentally jump with my keyboard.
Now, this is just the first point, the actual hardware affecting gameplay, and it's only one portion to why WASD movement can become an issue. We don't really have hardware-based advantages in League yet, other than maybe a 144Hz monitor. Games like Call of Duty have headset or audio advantage, remappable controllers or aim assist, the aforementioned 144+ Hz monitors, and a Wi FOV from PC, just to name a few. League has none of that, so this is the first time we'll see real hardware advantage. I really don't think people realize the strength that literally instant antagonizing movement will have. That means forward into backward or left to right immediately. This will be a heavy nerf to Skillshot champions. I'm looking at you, Dragdar, and I already know Karthus players are shaking in their boots. And how am I meant to pilot Riven? Now, obviously League isn't an FPS game, and strafing or instantly moving between two opposite directions to dodge skill shots is gated by League's relatively low movement speed. But let's throw camera control and accuracy into the mix. With WASD movement, your clicks don't have to leave the enemy champion or the target you're trying to hit to input a movement command. I know we've all misclicked on something and it's cost us a game or two at least once. Probably because you had to drag the mouse to shift your camera or you were just inputting movement. To expand on this as well, WASD only operates in the X and Y plane, which sounds funny because League has barely any Z, just the small height differences in River that lead to some very questionable missed or hit skill shots. But what this means is, however they choose to implement it, a lot of your movement will be on an up and down or diagonal, giving you greater accuracy because clicking on a target with a mouse is so sporadic and inaccurate. In another context, Nidhogg explained this well, but it was more to do with WASD camera control, not movement. But the point still stands. His video will also be in the description and was made before the WASD movement was announced, so keep that in mind.
Let's do a quick mechanics check before we get into the video. Try to keep your mouse on the target dummy or trace with your finger if you're on mobile. Let's do that again with a different camera movement, but this time I'll help you out, make it a little bit easier, and highlight the target for you. One last time, might be a little bit difficult, but try your best. So the whole point of that was to demonstrate the relationship between target selection and camera movement. First we had lock screen, then pushing the camera with the mouse, and finally leaving the camera still. Now I'm going to take a guess as to which one was the easiest, and if I'm right, you have to do me a favor and subscribe. Alright, you ready? Lock screen. Did that surprise you? It must have been the easiest because for some reason, everyone locks their
Now, of course, with this announcement as well, Reddit was skeptical. The front page says, WASD worries me. It's just going to be better and force us to move to WASD. I don't think that's their goal. I just think by nature, WASD will be the required go-to for competitive. Am I wrong? I want to be wrong. And the top comment to reply to that was, impossible to say until we get to see how it's implemented. Big difference between, say, Path of Exile 2 and LoL is that in Path of Exile 2, you run and gun. You walk and shoot your auto attacks at the same time. In League, issuing an auto attack cancels your last movement command, and issuing a movement command cancels your last auto attack if it is still in wind-up stage. That makes things significantly less smooth and intuitive. How strong WASD is going to be will largely depend on how much hand-holding Riot will add to deal with that. And the WASD rumors were true. I would argue that WASD is the biggest gameplay change Riot has ever made. And adding a new control scheme to a 16-year-old competitive game is wild. Now, on that note of it being 16 years old, why is WASD actually coming to League? It's not like players were struggling to control their champions at the current date, right? From Riot themselves, quote, we've seen that for new players, WASD is the most familiar control scheme for PC games today. And let's be real. A lot of us instinctively put our fingers there when coming back to League after playing something else. By offering WASD as an alternative control scheme, we believe League will feel more intuitive to some players who come from other games. This means if you're looking for a new way to play, new to League, or even inviting a friend to pick up League, it should be easier for everyone to jump in and get into what makes League awesome. But one thing about this perceived accessibility buff for more players, so to speak, for the game, is it also introduces a gating flaw in the top tiers. Like, if you can't play WASD, you're not going to be competitive versus someone who's got it down. With all this though, obviously, Riot has yet to announce exactly how they're going to implement it. So I don't know how they're going to do it, but all this could just mean nothing. But these are the challenges and hurdles they have to overcome. But as basically the whole community said, this will be broken if it goes down as we think it will. As I mentioned before, Riot has said they want to make it so there's no advantage to either one. But how will they do that? They've got a lot of work cut out for them. There's a lot of champions. I also want to know with WASD implementation, if there'll be remappable binds for movement, because someone even suggested inputting a steering wheel to control Sayonara, which is hilarious to think of. This is a pretty expansive topic, and I feel like I've still missed some stuff I was thinking about today. But anyway, go ahead and leave your thoughts down below and let's discuss. Also, if someone wants to count how many times I said WASD in this video, I'm gonna pin it. Bye.